The rise and fall of Kodak. A factory that knew the future and ignored it. 145,000 people used to work here. Today, there are fewer than 5,000 left. The factories stand quiet. The film production lines are frozen. Time has moved on from the company that once captured every moment. This is Kodak, the company that put a camera in every hand, that invented the digital camera, that coined the phrase Kodak moment. Beautiful, yes, but that's just the surface. Behind the nostalgia lies a darker story, of a future seen and deliberately ignored, of profits chosen over progress, and of a slow-motion collapse that destroyed not just a company, but an entire city's identity. Can market dominance make you immortal if you refuse to evolve? And the real question, how does a company invent the future and still die? If you enjoy deep investigations into American industrial history and the companies that shaped our nation, please like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments which shuttered factories we should explore next. General Motors in Flint? RCA in Camden? Xerox in Rochester? Your support makes these detailed stories possible. Thank you for being here. Let's begin. Part 1. Vision and Revolution, 1880 to 1930. Rochester, New York. A 24-year-old bank clerk faced a problem. George Eastman wanted to take photographs on a planned vacation to the Caribbean, but photography in 1878 was torture. The camera was the size of a microwave oven. The equipment required, glass plates, chemicals, darkroom tent, weighed as much as a pack horse. Eastman never made that trip. Instead, he became obsessed with solving the problem. For 3 years, he experimented in his mother's kitchen, working nights after his bank job, perfecting a dry plate coating process. In 1880, he quit the bank and leased a third floor on State Street in Rochester. The Eastman Dry Plate Company was born. The timing was perfect. Photography was emerging from specialized studios into broader professional use. Eastman's dry plates were more reliable and convenient than wet plates. The business grew steadily, but Eastman saw further. He didn't want to serve professional photographers. He wanted to democratize photography, to make it accessible to everyone. In 1884, the company introduced roll film, flexible, lightweight, and far simpler than glass plates. But cameras still required technical knowledge. Eastman needed to go further. He needed a system that anyone could use. On September 4th, 1888, George Eastman patented the Kodak camera and registered the trademark. The camera was a revolution. Small enough to hold, simple enough for anyone. It came preloaded with film for 100 exposures. The user pressed the button. Then they mailed the entire camera to Rochester. Kodak developed the film, printed the photos, reloaded the camera, and sent everything back. $10. Total. The slogan captured everything. You press the button, we do the rest. The Kodak name itself was brilliant. Eastman said he chose it because it meant nothing, worked in any language, and started and ended with his favorite letter, K, strong and incisive. Within a year, more than 5,000 cameras sold. Within a decade, photography transformed from a profession to a hobby. In 1892, the company reorganized as Eastman Kodak Company. Growth exploded. In 1900, Kodak launched the Brownie camera, $1 for the camera, 15 cents for film. Suddenly, children could take photographs. Photography became a mass market. Over 50 million units sold. Eastman built an empire on a simple insight: control the consumables. Cameras were tools to sell film, like razors and blades. The profit was in the film, the processing, the paper. Kodak invested in quality, innovation, and vertical integration. The company controlled raw materials, manufacturing, distribution, and processing. By 1907, Kodak employed 5,000 people worldwide. By 1927, over 20,000. In 1930, Kodak joined the Dow Jones Industrial Average. The company dominated photography. Market share exceeded 85%. Competitors existed, but Kodak set the standard. The brand became synonymous with photography itself. George Eastman was more than a businessman. He was a philanthropist who donated over $100 million to universities, hospitals, dental clinics, and cultural institutions. He treated workers well, implementing profit-sharing and benefits decades before such practices became common. Employees called Kodak the Great Yellow Father. In 1932, at age 77, suffering from a degenerative spinal disease and severe diabetes, Eastman took his own life. His suicide note read, "To my friends, my work is done. Why wait?" But his work lived on. Kodak continued to innovate. Kodachrome color film in 1935. The Instamatic camera in 1963. Over 50 million sold in 7 years. Kodak owned photography. The company was America. It was memory itself. The question no one asked: what happens when photography changes? Part 2. Empire and Dominance, 1930 to 1975. Through the mid-20th century, Kodak seemed invincible. The company introduced product after product, each a success, each reinforcing market dominance. Motion picture film, medical imaging, chemicals, optics. By the 1960s, Kodak commanded 90% of the United States film market and 85% of camera sales. Walk through any American home in the 1960s and you found Kodak. Kodachrome slides in projectors, Instamatic cameras in closets, photo albums filled with Kodak prints. The phrase Kodak moment entered the language, those fleeting, precious instances worth capturing. Rochester thrived. Kodak was the economic engine. The company funded schools, museums, hospitals, and parks. Employment meant security and pride. Families worked there for generations. The city grew prosperous on Kodak's success. In 1976, at its absolute peak, Kodak employed over 145,000 people globally. Revenue exceeded $16 billion. The stock traded at $95 per share. Market capitalization topped $31 billion. The Kodak brand ranked 5th most valuable in the world. Management believed the dominance would last forever. Film sales generated 80% of profits. The business model was perfect. Sell cameras cheaply, profit enormously from film and processing. Every vacation, every birthday, every graduation, Kodak captured it and profited from it. Then something extraordinary happened. Something that should have changed everything. Something that instead became the seed of destruction. In 1973, Kodak hired Stephen Sasson, a 23-year-old electrical engineer fresh from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. Sasson joined the research lab in Rochester. In 1974, his supervisor, Gareth Lloyd, gave him an assignment. Investigate whether a charged coupled device, a new sensor that converted light to electrical signals, could be used in a camera. Sasson approached the project with curiosity and scrounged parts. A lens from a Super 8 movie camera, 16 nickel-cadmium batteries, analog to digital converters, CCD sensor, circuit boards wired together. The contraption looked like a toaster. It weighed nearly 4 kilograms. But it worked. In December 1975, Sasson and his team tested the device on a lab technician, Joy Marshall. The camera captured a black-and-white image, 100 pixels by 100 pixels, 0.01 megapixels, and stored it on a digital cassette tape. It took 23 seconds to record, another 23 to play back on a television screen. The image was crude. The assistant's face was blurry, filled with static. But Sasson fixed the problem by adjusting cables. Suddenly, the face appeared clearly on the screen. Digital photography was born. Sasson presented his invention to Kodak executives. He walked into the room with his strange-looking camera. He took photos of people in the meeting. Then he removed the tape, inserted it into a playback unit, and displayed the images on a TV screen. Nobody celebrated. Nobody understood. The executives asked a simple question. Why would anyone want to take pictures this way when there's nothing wrong with film? Sasson's supervisor gave him direction. Patent it, but keep quiet. Don't tell anyone. The technology was too dangerous. It threatened the entire business model. In 1978, Kodak received a patent for Sasson's digital camera. Then the company buried it. For years, no one outside Kodak knew. Sasson continued working on digital photography in the research lab, developing improvements, building prototypes. In 1989, he and colleague Robert Hills created the first self-contained digital single-lens reflex camera, the prototype DSLR. Kodak refused to sell it. Film sales were too profitable to risk. The executives feared cannibalization. They believed digital photography was decades away from mainstream adoption. They chose comfort over courage. Beneath the triumph, a catastrophic mistake was being made. The future had been invented, and then locked in a drawer. Part 3. The Future Arrives, 1976 to 2000. While Kodak hesitated, the world moved. Japanese competitors, Canon, Nikon, Sony, saw the digital revolution coming and invested heavily. They didn't have film businesses to protect. They were free to innovate. Kodak did make moves toward digital. In 1984, the company launched the photo CD system. In 1991, it introduced the Kodak DCS-100, the first commercially available digital SLR, built on a Nikon camera body with a Kodak 1.3 megapixel sensor. Price: $25,000. The product targeted professionals. Photojournalists used them. But Kodak marketed cautiously, always careful not to undermine film sales. The company introduced consumer digital cameras in the mid-1990s, the DC-40, DC-120. They were expensive, limited, and marketed half-heartedly. Meanwhile, film sales peaked. In 2001, worldwide film sales reached their all-time high. Americans bought more film that year than ever before. Kodak executives looked at the numbers and felt reassured. Film wasn't dying. Digital was just a niche. Then the floor collapsed. Between 2001 and 2006, global demand for color photographic film fell by 60%. By 2010, the market had shrunk to less than 1/10 its 2001 size. The decline wasn't gradual, it was sudden and total. Digital cameras flooded the market. Consumers loved them. No film costs, instant feedback, easy sharing. Canon and Sony led the charge. Nikon followed. Kodak scrambled to compete but always lagged behind. In 2001, Kodak made a smart acquisition, a photo-sharing website called Ophoto. The site's slogan was, "Share memories, share life." Kodak could have transformed Ophoto into a social network, a platform for sharing photos online. Imagine Kodak owning the space that Facebook and Instagram would later dominate. Instead, Kodak used Ophoto to sell prints. The company saw the website as a tool to move consumers back to physical photos, back to paper, back to Kodak's core business. The digital revolution was occurring, and Kodak tried to reverse it. In 2012, during bankruptcy proceedings, Kodak sold Ophoto to Shutterfly for less than $25 million. The management's failures compounded. Kodak was bureaucratic, slow-moving, and isolated. Executives who questioned the film-centric strategy were sidelined. The company culture punished innovation and rewarded conformity. Leadership failed to adapt. Kodak promoted from within, creating a management class that knew only one way: the Kodak way. When the market demanded speed and flexibility, Kodak offered process and committee decisions. Worst of all, Kodak misunderstood its own business. The company believed it was in the film business. It wasn't. Kodak was in the memory business. George Eastman had understood this. He made photography accessible so people could capture and share memories, but his successors forgot. They clung to film when film became irrelevant. By the early 2000s, the decline was visible. Revenue fell. Profits vanished. In 2003, Kodak's stock traded around $30, down from $95 in 1997. In September 2003, the company slashed its dividend by 70%. The markets reacted with horror. Employment collapsed. In 1988, Kodak had employed 145,000 people. By 2003, that number fell to 64,000. By 2011, 17,000 remained. Factories closed. Laboratories shut down. Rochester bled. The question became not whether Kodak would survive, but when it would die. Part 4. The Collapse, 2001 to 2012. The 2000s were brutal. Kodak fought desperately to survive. The company invested billions in digital cameras, printers, and imaging technology. But competitors were faster, better, and hungrier. Canon dominated digital SLRs. Sony led compact cameras. HP controlled photo printers. Then came the smartphone. In 2007, Apple released the iPhone with an integrated camera. Suddenly, everyone carried a camera everywhere. The standalone camera market began to collapse. Kodak had no presence in smartphones. The company missed the biggest platform shift in photography history. Kodak tried everything. In the mid-2000s, the company acquired stakes in digital printing companies. It launched online photo services. It sold cheap inkjet printers, giving away the hardware to sell ink, repeating the razor and blades model. But ink cartridges didn't generate the margins that film had, and competitors like HP and Epson dominated printing. Financial pressure mounted. Kodak's debt grew. The company sold assets to generate cash. In 1997, it sold its office imaging business. In 1999, it sold printer and copier operations. Each sale brought temporary relief but signaled retreat. By 2010, Kodak's market share in digital cameras had fallen to 7%, down from 90% in film. Revenue for 2011 was $6 billion, less than one-third the 1990 peak. The company lost money year after year. Kodak had one asset left: patents. The company held over 1,000 patents related to digital imaging, including fundamental technologies that every digital camera and smartphone used. Kodak had invented much of digital photography. Surely the patents had value. In 2010, the company sued Apple, Samsung, and others for patent infringement, hoping to extract licensing fees or settlement payments. The lawsuits dragged on. Some were settled, but the amounts were far less than expected. In 2012, Kodak sold its patent portfolio to a consortium led by Apple, Google, Facebook, and other tech giants. Price: $527 million. The sum was massive in absolute terms, but Kodak had hoped for $2 billion. The patents, the intellectual property from decades of innovation, sold for a fraction of their potential value. Too late. Too desperate. On January 19, 2012, Kodak filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The company listed assets of $5.1 billion and liabilities of $6.75 billion. The filing shocked America. Kodak, bankrupt. Judge Alan Gropper, who oversaw the bankruptcy proceedings, called it a tragedy of American economic life. The bankruptcy revealed devastation. Kodak owed $2.8 billion to its pension plan. Thousands of retirees faced benefit cuts. Secured creditors would be paid fully. Unsecured creditors received 4 to 5 cents on the dollar. Shareholders received nothing. Retirement benefits vanished. Healthcare coverage disappeared. Jerry Green, a longtime Kodak employee, said, "I never would have believed it in my wildest dreams. I thought Kodak was invincible." The company sold remaining assets. The personalized imaging and document imaging units went to the UK Kodak pension plan for $650 million in exchange for dropping its $2.8 billion claim. Other divisions were liquidated. On September 3, 2013, Kodak emerged from bankruptcy, a shell of its former self. The new Kodak focused on commercial printing, packaging, and specialty chemicals. Consumer photography was gone. The Kodak brand survived, but the empire was dead. Part 5. The Ghost Town, 2013 to present. Walk through Rochester today. The massive Kodak facilities remain. Sprawling brick buildings, empty parking lots, silent production lines. Some have been repurposed. Some sit vacant. The city struggles to reinvent itself. Employment at Kodak today: fewer than 5,000 globally. Revenue: around $1 billion annually, less than 1/10 the 1990 peak. The company exists, but barely. It operates in niche markets: commercial printing, motion picture film for Hollywood, specialty materials. Nothing close to its former dominance. In August 2025, Kodak warned investors there was substantial doubt about its ability to continue operating. The company had nearly $500 million in debt due within 12 months and only $155 million in cash. Management proposed tapping into surplus pension funds to pay creditors. The ghosts of George Eastman wept. The human cost is staggering. Families that worked at Kodak for 3 generations watched their way of life evaporate. Workers who expected pensions saw benefits reduced or eliminated. Healthcare coverage disappeared. Skilled engineers and technicians found their expertise worthless in a digital world they helped create, but were never allowed to embrace. Rochester never recovered. Kodak was the city's identity. When Kodak collapsed, the city collapsed. Unemployment soared. Property values crashed. Schools lost funding. The prosperity that Eastman built, the museums, the universities, the hospitals, now operates on fumes. The story of Kodak is often told as a victim narrative, killed by disruptive technology and unfair competition. That version is wrong. Kodak killed itself. Yes, digital photography disrupted film. Yes, smartphones changed everything. But Kodak invented digital photography. Kodak saw the future in 1975. The company had the technology, the patents, the brand, and the resources to lead the digital revolution. Instead, it chose to protect a dying business model. Compare Kodak to Fujifilm, its closest competitor. Fujifilm faced the same disruption. Film sales collapsed, but Fujifilm pivoted aggressively. The company diversified into cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, medical imaging, and materials science. Fujifilm invested its film chemistry expertise into new industries. The company survived and thrived. Today, Fujifilm generates over $20 billion in annual revenue across multiple industries. It employs over 70,000 people. The company is healthy and growing. The difference was not luck. It was leadership. Fujifilm's CEO, Shigetaka Komori, recognized that the core business was dying and acted decisively. He told his executives, "A peak always conceals a treacherous valley." Fujifilm rebuilt itself from the ground up. Kodak's leadership saw the same valley and pretended it wasn't there. They chose denial over adaptation. They believed their dominance was permanent. George Eastman had warned against exactly this complacency decades earlier. The world is moving, and a company that contents itself with present accomplishments soon falls behind. His successors ignored the warning. Lessons from the ruins. Stand at the entrance of the old Kodak complex in Rochester and look at the empty buildings. The scale is overwhelming, testimony to industrial ambition, engineering genius, and American innovation. But the silence is overwhelming too. The absence of activity, no workers arriving, no production running, no future being built, tells a story as powerful as any success. Kodak built modern photography. The Brownie camera, Kodachrome film, the digital camera, products that changed how humanity captures and shares experience, infrastructure that enabled memories. Then Kodak died. Not suddenly, not from external forces, but from internal failure, from seeing the future and choosing the past, from inventing the revolution and hiding it, from dominance that bred arrogance. Who paid the price? Workers who gave their labor and lost their pensions. Investors who lost their capital. Retirees who saw promised benefits vanish. A city that lost its identity and prosperity. How does a company invent the future and still die? By prioritizing quarterly profits over long-term survival. By protecting a declining business instead of building a growing one. By mistaking market share for invincibility. The lesson is brutal. Technology changes everything. Market dominance is temporary. The greatest danger isn't competition, it's complacency. Kodak invented digital photography. Then it hid the invention. And that choice destroyed everything George Eastman built. If you enjoyed this deep investigation into American industrial history, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support makes these detailed stories possible. Tell me in the comments which shuttered factories should we explore next. General Motors Flint Assembly, RCA's Camden plant, Westinghouse in Pittsburgh, Packard Automotive in Detroit. Or perhaps something unexpected. A forgotten factory with a story waiting to be told. These places aren't just ruins, they're warnings. Built by visionaries, destroyed by their successors' blindness, paid for with real costs, human and financial, and preserved now only in memory and silence. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next investigation.